Hello students, we are going to say about technical protective consideration in mobile radiography. So we have introduction, ALARA, cardinal principles of radiation protection and radiation reduction technique for occupational workers and patient consent and technical factors, which is done during word radiography. So we all know that radiation, ionizing radiation can damage cells, and it can have various biological effects, which we have two types, that is stochastic effect and deterministic effect. In order for these kinds of biological effects of this radiation, we have to ensure that all occupational workers and the publics are not exposed to radiation in excess of limits. Workers in diagnostic radiology are exposed exclusively to external irradiation, like the exposures of radiographers. If they work in according to elementary rules of radiological protection, it will be very low. So we have to ensure timely detection and rectification of malfunction of the equipment. So we all know what is ALARA. It is known as low as reasonable achievable. So this means that we have to keep the minimum exposure factors while maintaining image quality. So again, we must not forget the cardinal principles of radiation protection, that is time, distance and shielding. So time being about minimizing the amount of time we are in proximity of radiation exposure, and distance is to maximize the distance between us, occupational workers, and the source of radiation. And shielding as we should always use optimal shielding to protect ourselves from exposure. So to reduce radiation dose for the occupational workers, we can reduce it by maintaining distance, and as scattered radiation increases, the radiation dose induced in the occupational workers also decreases. So for staff protection, radiation workers protection, we have personal shielding. Like shielding of occupational workers can be achieved by following methods, like personnel should remain in the radiation environment only when necessary, like stepping behind a control booth or leave the room when not doing practical, and always wear lead aprons or shielding apparels, which is recommended for use by radiation workers, and these are all classified as under secondary bearers to the effects of ionizing radiation. And then we also have other protective apparels, which includes eye glasses and thyroid shieldings, hand gloves, curtains in the fluoroscopic equipments, and the minimum protective lead equivalence in these hand gloves and thyroid shields should be 0.5 millimeters, and then the minimum protective lead equivalence in this lead apron should be 0.25 millimeters lead equivalent. So in next we're going to say about informed consent. So this mobile radiography, when we talk about mobile radiography, we are practicing this mobile radiography outside of the diagnostic radiology department. So mainly we are doing this kinds of mobile radiography for patients who cannot, who is like physically not fit for transport, or who is terminally ill patients, And for this we must never forget about informed consent before doing mobile radiography. So informed consent means we have to explain the procedures that we are about to do, the things that we're going to do, that we're going to use x-rays, and we should not repeat the exposure. So we, while giving while taking informed consent, we must also give them proper explanation about motions from the patients, which can result in double exposure, which will again result in radiation dose increases. So this mobile radiography equipment gives special radiation protections considerations for the radiographers, like suitable protective garments like lid apron, and this lid apron should be assigned for each of the mobile unit. And in case of technical exposure, we should always try to control the quantity of scattered radiation which is produced, but in this while maintaining technical exposure factors, one should always maintain about the image quality. So if we give higher technical exposure, it can increase the mean energy of the photons, and average energy of the beam increases, percentage of radiation that is forward scattered is increasing. And the control of external radiation. Workers in diagnostic radiology are exposed continuously due to scattered radiation if not comply with standard safety measures. The exposure to radiation of radiographs, if they work in line with the elementary rules of radiological protection, will be very low. So in the next topic we have collimation. So while doing word radiography, collimation is one of the biggest important to reduce radiation dose, because mostly the positioning of the patient can be very unsatisfying. So we used to, due to this we used to increase lots of collimation, which should never be done. So proper collimation should always be maintained. And distance as a means of protection, like I said, distance is, we followed inverse square slope. That is, when the distance from a source of radiation is doubled, radiation at the new location spans an area 4 times larger than the original area. However, the intensity at the new distance is only 1/4 the original intensity. That means if we decrease the distance between the source and the patient, radiation dose is directly decreased. And like I said, we should always avoid repeated exposure, as it will increase radiation dose. And while handling equipments, we should check the equipment whether it's functioning correctly or not, and then whether there is adequate protection for all persons in all the surrounding areas. And so we must not all of these following points: appropriate shielding, appropriate protective clothing, adequate distance between parts of the body and the X-ray tube and patient, limitation of time spent in the vicinity of the X-ray and patient. Thank you.